Let's go ahead and pull out some paper, as well as your periodic tables from yesterday. Alright guys, so here we go. Now, at the beginning of the class, I put you guys up into groups, and then I asked you guys to go research various areas of the periodic table. And that's what we're going to be talking about at first, all these different groups are in the periodic table. And so for those of you guys who weren't really sure kind of how the periodic table is organized, one thing to remember is the main thing that's organized by is the atomic number, which remember from yesterday, the atomic number is the same thing as the number of what? Wait, that's right, I want you to respond. Atomic number is the same thing as the number of protons. So when we think about how the periodic table is organized, it's organized by the number of protons that each element has. And then one of the things I do want to point out to us here is that your vertical columns are called groups. The verticals are called groups. And then your horizontal rows, those are called periods. And we have a total of 18 groups on our periodic table. And a total of 7 periods on the periodic table. Each period represents a shell, one of the electron shells. Well, what I want to point out to you guys here, we're going to kind of identify a couple things. The first thing is, we're going to move from up here. And we're going to talk about each one of these groups. Group 1, the very first column, is called your alkali metals. That's group 1. So that's going to include things like lithium, sodium, potassium, cesium, rubidium, francium. We're going to watch a video on this here in a little bit. It's pretty neat. Well, except for a little bit of a choice language issue, it's pretty neat. Choice language issue? Yep. No. And then the next column, or group 2, is called the alkaline. And then I like to call the middle part there the abyssal plane. Notice also there's all this junk in the middle that collectively, all of this is your transitional elements, or transitional metals. And we're not going to be spending a lot of time understanding how these things work because they really don't play by the rules. And we'll talk about the rules at the last part of today's lesson. But that whole middle section refuses to play by the rules. And then you notice the yellow. You guys see the yellow one just kind of going down at an angle? So we have this little section right down here. Those are called the metalloids. And then we have all of our nonmetals over here. And then we have the last two columns we need to talk about. So this right here is your halogen. And then we have your noble gases. A couple of things that we talk about in terms of organization of the periodic table. You have metals on the left, nonmetals on the right. The closer you get to the left side of the periodic table, the more metallic you become. The farther that you get on the right side of the periodic table, the more gaseous that you become. Okay, so we start moving away from metals, and we definitely have our gases on the far right. And then, in fact, chlorine and iodine and bromine tend to be gaseous in nature. We usually have to dilute them in water, so that's not how you get bromine solutions. And chlorine, which is often bleach, is basically just diluted chlorine gas. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to depend on you guys. I guess there's something mentioned here. Let's erase up here. I want to point out one thing. I think you guys are probably asking questions on your product table, or maybe never have asked. Take a look at this. Right here, I have barium at 56. And then all of a sudden I jump to 71. How do I go from 56 to 71? There's a whole bunch of stuff in between. That's where the bottom two rows come in. They actually squeeze in right here. And they're actually going to squeeze in between those two. The reason why we don't put them in there is because you imagine if those rows actually were put into the periodic table, think about how much space that would actually take up on the page. So, I mean, they're there, but we don't really put them there because it just makes it easier to put on a single sheet of paper. Yes? Oh, okay, so you guys actually, so they give you the 57, and then they, okay, that's the same thing though. So you guys still have a gap though, right, from 57 to 72, and that's where the bottom two rows are going to fit in. Alright, so let's start depending on you guys a little more here. So we have some different groups that had to research some different information. So we had group 1 that was doing alkali metals. What did you guys find out?